Hello, everybody, and welcome to our Trends to Watch for 2024 event. I am beyond excited for the crowd that we have coming together, and the fact that before we got going, I already see comments coming in, people saying hello, talking about exciting things going on in our community within the Insurtech space. So please, please, please keep all of your comments coming. Let us know who you are, where you're joining from, chime in as we're discussing the different trends that we're going to be talking about today, because the entire point of doing this live is so that we have the opportunity to interact with everybody in the comments and really keep the conversation feeling like we're live and together as much as we possibly can. There's also a little special treat coming from Santa Claus Megan and the team at Insurtech Insights that's going to allow us to give away 3 different tickets to the different shows across the world in 2024. So we're going to be giving away a ticket for the US Insurtech Insights, for the Asia Insurtech Insights, as well as Europe. So we've got 3 different tickets, 3 different regions. So the assignment for everybody that wants to be entered to win that is to get active with your festive little emoji fingers in the chat. Put something that is holiday themed of any sort and let us know that you want to enter in the drawing for the tickets, and then let us know which region you'd like your ticket to be potentially considered for. Again, I see tons of messages starting to pop in saying hello, telling us where people are joining from. And I think today with a crowd this size, I might not have the opportunity to put everybody up there, but I'm going to do as much as I can to shout people out that are active in the comments. I have to put up my fellow Wisconsinite. But before we get to everybody else joining us for the trends, because it's my show, I'm going to give you guys a minute of my trend to watch for the next year. And then I'm going to start and we're going to rapid fire bring everybody in. So it's a 90-minute show, but I promise it's going to feel a lot shorter than that because all of these experts have 5 minutes and that's it. So it's going to be a really, really quick paced show. Apologies now if I mute myself or if there's a cat in the background or something, because I always say live TV and all. So keep the comments coming and we'll spend some time going through them for looking for those folks that are saying, I want an ITI ticket. Here's my festive emojis and here's where I'd like to get a ticket for the show. So keep those in there and we'll do our best to sort through those and announce winners in the next couple of days. Now that all of my housekeeping things are done, I'm going to jump on my soapbox to talk a little bit about my trend to watch for 2024. And then I'm going to bring Awais Farouk on as our first guest to talk through his, which I actually think will be a really great extension of what I'm going to talk about. So for anybody that interacts with Leading Change on a regular basis, you might see this thread or trend starting to emerge in the content that I'm creating and the conversations that I'm having on a regular basis. And I know some people might think that I would go down the tech trend path. If you want to see my tech trends to watch, keep an eye out for Modern Insurance Magazine's Insurtech Talk. Megan did an interview with me where I talk through more technical trends there, so that issue will be out soon. But the trend that I want to set the stage with today is a discussion around the importance of education and changing our approach of getting in front of our consumers, potential talent to come into the industry, and really starting to use education as a tool to reshape our perception outside of the wonderful Insurtech and insurance community that we've built. I think that there is a true opportunity for us to tap into telling our story differently. And to the surprise of nobody, events like this, digital tactics for getting in front of people, and of course, social media, I think is a huge opportunity for our industry to start showing up differently, getting talent excited about joining our industry, and also helping to educate our consumers to make better decisions on how they go about purchasing insurance and potentially mitigating risk. Which is part of the reason that my co-founder, who's over in the other side of the basement, which is why I'm gesturing, James Roloff and I started what we call the Catalyst community. And I'm going to give a quick shameless plug for that Catalyst community for anybody that's interested in learning how to get more active on social media and really start telling our story differently. our community already has leaders that are going to be on this show, a part of the community, and it's growing quickly. And we're starting to see a really big impact in the way that people are interacting and showing up on social media. So if you're interested in learning more about it, go to roloffconsulting.com and check out the community, or let me know if you've got any questions. And just because he's my husband and I can do this, I'm going to shout him out on live here. James, if you could drop the link into the chat for everybody so that I can bring on our first guest. So Aways, I'm going to welcome you to the stage here and bring you on as our first guest for today. Welcome.
Yes, thank you, Emma. Thank you for having me. This is very exciting. I always look forward to this every year. So
we've only got a few minutes, so it's rapid fire. So I'm going to tee you up. Can you give everybody a real quick introduction to what your trend to watch is?
Yes, my trend is really around introducing and redefining talent acquisition, development, and retention strategies. And it really revolves around, for the past about decade, we've been talking about retirement of the baby boomers in our industry and how rapid that's going. And I posted an article earlier, which was talking about in 2028, we will have 50% of the insurance industry that's going to be retiring. So we have to fill a huge gap in a short period of time. So 2024 is a very exciting year for everyone, including insurance companies and young professionals that are trying to figure out what they want to do in their life. And overall, just as as our industry develops into more technologically advanced organizations and so on and so forth. So I think there's a lot of opportunity, and it's something that everybody's going to be talking about.
So Aways, then what I want to do before we part ways on our rapid fire is ask you, what type of advice do you have both on like the carrier side and also on like the young talent or job seeking side to kind of help us solve this conundrum?
Yeah, so from a carrier standpoint, I think, we identify that the technology is going to take a bigger and bigger role as we progress forward in the future. And how do we leverage technology and humans at the same time? You need a blend of both of those elements. And if you think about the IT industry, initially it was looked at as if they're going to come over to computers are going to take over our jobs and whatnot. And you look at the industry around you, IT is probably the biggest industry in our environment. So I think there's going to be a lot of opportunity in how you leverage technology alongside with humans. And our technology computing power is doubling every single year. So that doesn't mean that we reduce the staff by 50%. It just means that there's a lot of opportunity and technology is progressing faster than organizations are adopting it. With that being said, on the flip side, I think for young talent, it's a great opportunity to develop your brand, to get recognition, to identify ways how you can upskill, cross-skill, get involved in initiatives, get involved within your organization and identify how do you pave your own path instead of somebody coming up and driving that for you, because it's going to change. It's not going to be same as it was for other people that may be mentoring you. So it's going to shift based off of the environment that we're in. So I think it's around developing your own brand and making sure that you have a good vision of where you want to go and what are the steps that you are going to need to be able to get there.
Full disclosure, everybody, Aways didn't know I was going to talk about the community and brand development beforehand, but I'm going to take the opportunity to say again, obviously, I believe in that so much. And, Aways, you and I have talked about this a number of times. We're both relatively young. We both don't look a lot like everybody else that's in insurance, but through building a brand, we've really had this amazing opportunity to build our careers to new heights. And so the advice that you just gave is, I would say, A++ advice. I do have to real quickly before I take you off air, shame you a little because last year you had a Santa sweater and I don't know where it is, but I wish that it was here today.
Well, thank you for shaming me. It was a pleasure being shamed by you, Emma. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for joining us, Aways. And I'm going to get Jeff up on the screen here. As I'm doing that, I'm going to remind everybody, Santa Megan is giving away tickets. Ooh, Santa and a dinosaur. Aways, you should be jealous. I see people coming in from Switzerland. I saw London. We've got here many people here from the States. So everybody keep coming into the comments. It makes me so happy to see that. And don't forget to get those festive emojis along with a region that you might want a ticket for ITI into the comments so that we have enough people to choose from. And then we'll announce our winners after the live is done. So Jeff, welcome to the stage. We're so excited to have you here. You're muted. I'm glad that you're the one that did it first instead of me.
Thanks for having me.
So let's get started by introducing your trend.
Yeah, I think continued trend, it's not just a new trend, continued trend for 2024 will be more API wins. And, there's a lot of API tools out there. And, there's two big ecosystems for the agents and carriers in the systems are Applied and Vertafore. And Vertafore have the thing called the orange partners, right? So a lot of people don't spend time going there. Look, if you go into Vertafore, look at their orange partners, you see so many software companies from legacy software to many, many Insurtech software companies, the likes of Armadillo, the likes of Wonderwrite, and Loss Run Pro, which is one of my favorite. And, I think a lot of agents know they're there, but what we're going to see in the trend in 2024 is more connectivity, right? Like the minute they're logging into their day, everything's bolt on. So instead of agent have to go out there trying to figure out, these are agents are insurance people, they're not tech people, right? That these two should be automatically bolt onto your system, so all the data connects, right? We have some amazing tools out there, and I think going into 2024 is connecting them again and have it more flowing with each other. So this way that when you pull data in the front end and then continue through your quoting process, your policy process, your binding process, your claim process, those data are always there for anybody to pull up at any given time. And I think, API takes time. Everyone want that big disruption. And I think, what we're talking about is evolution of enhancements. And that's what we're going to see in 2024 for agents, and also better training, right? And then one trend I'm going to see coming forward more is when we're presenting options for clients outside of home and auto through the raters, they're going to see more stacked quotes offering, like addition life insurance quotes, flood insurance quotes, home warranty quotes, right? Tornado, offering through like silo, right? Things like that nature. And also cyber. If cyber community is going to grow from 4 billion to 20 billion, we will see more standalone cyber personal line policies, cyber commercial policies on top of the BOB workers' comp, and endorsement to home policies on cyber options. So I think these are the things that we're going to see going forward.
So I know you're talking about this interconnection through API, and we've actually got Margot Giles on later from Iris as well. And I'm interested to see if that starts to creep into her trend a little bit as well. But Jeff, how do you think that this increased connectivity is actually going to help kind of bolster connection between FinTech and InsurTech?
Sure. I think it's experience for the customer, right? At the end of the day, InsurTech should be, using tech to elevate insurance for a better experience for the consumers. And there's a lot of options that's at our agent disposal right now, but it's so hard to present to them and then like drop in from customer like a buffet line, right? So I think, when we see more APIs in this is going forward in the future, when all the consumer data are all flowing together, and then, we can do a better job delivering a more policy, more option, more protection to customers. I think somewhere I read that average policy line per household of insurance is around 1.7, 1.8. And to properly protect a family, I think we should get to the 4 or 5 range. And that's how we got to get there, by having API connecting everything together. I hope I answered that question.
You did. And thank you so much for taking the time and also understanding the assignment with the festive garb. So I'm not up here by myself. Thank you so much, Jeff. I'm going to pull you off and bring our next guest, Lisa, on, who also I can see backstage understood the festive assignment. So thank you so much, Jeff. Join into the chat with everybody else. And everybody, if you've got questions for him, put them there and we'll be able to keep the conversation going. Thank you, Jeff. All right, Miss Lisa, welcome to the stage.
I'm so excited to be here. I was like jingling behind stage. Rock on. And Got a little upside down elf going because we're going to talk about the topsy-turvy and the trend of 2024. Super excited to be here, Emma.
I love it. I almost put on reindeer, but I figured I'd get distracted by the bells.
Yeah.
So
The only thing is I need to make my camera a little. Here we go. I got it. I got the bells and the elf.
Do a little side jingle. Okay, well, thank you. Welcome. I'm going to give one last plug. Everybody, you've got questions, you've got comments. Throw it in there into the comments section on LinkedIn or YouTube, wherever you're watching. We love to see it, and we'd love to continue the discussion. So Lisa, one, everyone loves that you're going all out. Two, can you give us an introduction?
Me and Ace Hardware have a love relationship this time of year.
Mine are Target. So Lisa, can you give everybody an introduction to what your trend to watch for 2024 is?
Yeah. So first of all, super excited to be here. And Emma, for those who participated last year, I was all about how the insurance industry is moving from static or point in time to dynamic or fluid, meaning never at rest, continual. I think that we need, first of all, we haven't seen enough traction in that. We definitely have many dynamic Insurtech capabilities, but we still have a very static, fundamental industry that is still point in time. And part of this like hydraulic pressure, which is leading into my 2024 trend, is that the dynamic pressure is so much that the static point in time nature, even thinking well beyond systems, Emma, cannot quite handle the force that's being thrown at it. So this year, I'm really moving into a 2024 prediction with an action word, so an adverb, to describe or modify action called applied. We need to be applying what we are doing beyond a PowerPoint and beyond a point solution and weaving it into the tapestry of our processing functions in a dynamic, fluid way.
Lisa, I love that not only did you offer a trend, but then you also like added this next level of like, we're talking about an adverb this year. That feels very
Gotta get the little plug in there. We're going for an action to identify action. You know me, I don't like sitting on the sidelines.
I feel like we're making use of like elementary school English, and I love it. So where I want to kind of take this is dive a little bit deeper into your thoughts in our whole 3 minutes that we've got left about how do we start to actually apply emerging technologies and what steps have to take place in order for us to be able to do that.
Yeah, so great question, Emma. And, you know, there's so many aspects to this, but let's start fundamentally with like my beating drum this week, at least, has been, it has to go beyond the PowerPoint, right? So we have to get beyond conceptualizing it. Clearly, we have to think about strategy. You know, that's something I always think about. How do we artfully weave together an entire tapestry of which these capabilities are, you know, like a string or a thread? So AI is a great example. It shouldn't be used for everything. It's not like you abandon everything else and just pivot to AI, but it's how do you weave a tapestry? Maybe AI is the golden thread in that tapestry. It's very expensive. It's going to have a lot of curated uses, but you're not going to weave an entire tapestry of gold, or like definitely not, and maintain our cost and margins and loss ratios. So I think what we really need to do is not just try to take something and apply it digitally, or, you know, my also beating drum, Emma, is like, you know, we got to get off the treadmill of just making something incrementally better. The applied concept this year is reconstructing and rethinking how we can serve customers better with the threading or the tooling that is now enabled to us. So I also would just like to emphasize, to me, it's beyond a POC. We do a lot of POCs and we do a lot of proofs. I think we need to prove value, not spot one-off projects and solutions. So foundationally, I see a concept coming through. Business architecture, yes, it is like the Lego building blocks. And I think the fundamental thing about where are the innovation masters of insurance? How do we apply these foundationally beyond an isolated use case and beyond, I would say, like a point solution? So my big word is applied. And the big trend that I'm thinking is enterprise grade. You'll see that in AI. You'll see that in APIs. You'll see that embedded. We cannot apply these things one-off. We need to think across our entire organization. What do you think, Emma?
There we go. I feel like Nigel told me Nigel Walsh, who will be on later, that I needed a swear jar for every time we brought up generative AI. I might have to have a swear jar for every time I'm muted, swear off screen, and then put a quarter into it.
I just wanted the record to reflect that I muted the great Ema Roloff.
Unfortunately, it happens far too often. But Lisa, thank you so much. I already see comments and questions coming in building on this idea. And I know you'll understand the assignment
For
to head
sure.
there and
I'll be
interact with
answering them.
everybody
Thank
in
you all so
comments.
much. Cheers.
Thank you so much for joining us. And up next, I'm going to bring on Joe. Hello, welcome.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Yeah. So I am super excited for this because, like, spoiler to everybody, Joe and I have actually never met officially.
That's right.
So this is like a first interaction for the world to see, literally the whole world to see. Thank you so much for joining us. Would you mind giving a quick introduction and then sharing your trend for 2024?
I'd love to. So I'm Joe Emerson, co-founder and CTO of Branch. We're a U.S. personalized insurer that makes it easy to bundle. We sold the first online umbrella policy in 2019. And we have one of the highest bundling rates of any personal lines carrier in the U.S. because it's so easy to buy home, auto, umbrella, condo renters from us. I'm a 6-time serial entrepreneur. And so I like to think of these things in terms of specifics. I always want to know what is the specific thing that's going to happen and why, and what tells us that that's going to be the case. And so my prediction is that we're going to see some very interesting things with AI and customer support.
Back to Nigel's swear jar. We might have to put another coin in there for that.
That's right.
But I want to dive into some of what you're seeing specifically to, like, how are we going to use large language models and these AI tools to start offsetting that very, like, human heavy process today?
Yeah, I think of there being sort of 3 general tiers of support. One of them is people have general questions that are sort of generally about insurance or generally about the product that you're selling as a carrier, and nothing specific really about their coverages. Then there are specific, but also just questions that have answers about their coverages. And then finally, there is a need to actually make changes to their policy or billing or other things. And so that is this stair-step ladder of things that are easier to harder to do with something like a large language model. I mean, large language models, I think a good way to think of them is it's like having an infinite number of kind of average intelligence people, but allowing them to run through and have infinite time in your knowledge bases and information. And so in general, and they also can interpret natural language. So in general, if you ask a question of a large language model in English, you can get an answer back out that's usually relatively correct if you have a good knowledge base that answers the question. And so we're seeing this already, getting actually to that level where you would call in and say, add a car, drop a car. That would be the highest, hardest tier. But we're seeing companies already move toward and try to make this a reality.
So I'm going to ask you another follow-up question real quick, because you just brought up, I think, a really important part. And you talked about if you have a good knowledge base. And I think that kind of extends to if you have the data and the data structure cleaned up in an efficient way. So how often are you seeing that being a reality, or is that a foundational step that we need to put in place before we can get to that next level?
In my experience, most carriers have great knowledge bases, and it doesn't really have to be that structured. I mean, you need to give context. And so sometimes knowledge bases are like in Excel tables, and those tend to be harder to load into LLMs because you have to put context on them. But at Branch, we use this knowledge base, a system called Guru, and we didn't do this with the intention of hooking it up to a large language model. But when we hooked it up, it was kind of 80-90% of the way there. And then you just iterate on it. So I actually think a lot of the training materials we already have for our customer support are very leverageable. I think the hardest problems are going to be getting comfortable with the error rate. And the real magic's going to come when you dial in, you get connected to your speech, your question gets turned into text, gets bounced off a large language model, the answer comes back, that gets converted into speech, and you're essentially talking to a large language model over the phone. And my expectation is we'll see some live real experiments doing exactly that, at least in the general information category in the next 12 months.
And we could probably dive into it more too, but I think this idea of starting to converse with technology and having that true like natural language component back and forth is where we're going to start to see a lot of things like asking your computer to do X, Y, and Z for you and starting to really interact at that level. So I think that ties into some other trends that if we had more than 30 seconds left, we could dive into in another conversation. But I feel like I can officially say, and Joe, don't embarrass me because we're on a live with a whole lot of people, a friendship has been born and we will be friends now, and I will force you to come and be involved in other content moving forward.
I'm very happy and excited to be your friend.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. And also there were a lot of comments about that sweater. So A+ on understanding that assignment. Thanks for joining us. And now I'm going to bring on Adrian. Welcome.
Thanks for having me. I don't have a funky jumper today, but I do have this.
That's perfect. All it is was whatever festivity you had to bring, and no one's worn a Santa hat yet. So I think it's great. Adrian, could you give everybody an introduction and then introduce your trend to watch for 2024?
Yeah, I think the trend to watch is the reaction of the reinsurance markets to young startups. 3/4 of capital that has gone from venture capital into Insurtech has gone into carriers, MGAs, or others who are in that flow. Reinsurance sits at the very end. Reinsurance pricing is as high as it's been in the last 20 years. There's a big renewal on January 1st of actually perhaps more than half of the world's reinsurance renewing on that day. It looks like things are going to actually kind of come out okay. It feels like an orderly, flat renewal from everything I'm hearing. But I think you have to watch very carefully because anybody who's operating in that chain needs to understand what's going on in reinsurance. There was this idea of the reinsurance veto that reinsurers are going to come and say, okay, we're just going to stop doing business with a bunch of these startups. Hasn't really happened yet. Actually, reinsurers have been really highly supportive of young startups in our industry. And I think that is something to continue to watch. I actually think it's going to continue to happen. And I think you're actually going to see a lot of support more broadly from incumbents for Insurtech going forward into 2024, despite what you've seen in the world of venture capital. So that's my trend to watch.
So Adrian, I put the comment up here for a second, but it sounds like you've created a new phrase for everybody. Rather than ugly sweater, funky jumper. So let's talk a little bit more about the impact that this is going to then have on the casualty market as a whole.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, casualty is more challenged right now. There have been some pretty bad years that are starting to show adverse development through the bottom of the last soft market. There have been a number of companies in Insurtech that are more casualty oriented, and they're dependent on reinsurance as well. It takes time for their results to show through, unlike the more property oriented startups. So I think that is the key area to watch, because how are reserves going to develop? How is inflation going to affect reserve quality, reserve adequacy, and how is that going to then flow through into reinsurers' willingness and even ability to continue to be backing companies in the casualty space? Again, I think right now it's a trend to watch. I don't think there are any red alarms going off, but it's something that I would keep in mind, particularly if you're operating in the casualty space.
Well, and you just gave me the perfect segue. So it's a trend to watch. But for anybody that wants to watch the trend, make sure that you're following Adrian. He will let us know when there goes a red alarm that we need to be aware of. And also a plug to follow every single person that's a part of this live stream, if you're not already, to keep up to date with all of these trends. It's not a once a year thing that we're talking about issues that impact the market. And so I wanted to use that segue to shout from the rooftops, make sure you're following everybody here so that you can stay up to date on these trends moving forward. Adrian, the funky sweater or funky jumper thing has really seemed to take off. I see multiple comments about it. So your Santa hat and you set something off and started things going.
I think the London people will find that term very familiar, actually.
Oh, yeah. Well, and I've been on these before with enough people from the UK where I recognize but I don't know, jumper means something different to me as a woman in the United States, but I'll forgive it. Another plug for everybody before I let you off air, Adrian, is again, make sure you're commenting if you'd like to be entered to win a ticket to ITI, just like, and I unfortunately can't pull through the name on this one, festive emojis and where you'd like to be entered for. Don't worry, LinkedIn user, when we're in LinkedIn, I'll be able to see who you are. And we're going to choose a winner for the US ITI, Europe, and Asia as well. So get those little emoji fingers going. Adrian, thank you so much for joining us. Have a wonderful day. And now I'm going to bring on Bobby. All right. Welcome.
Hello.
Look at you cute
Hello.
little dog. Oh, it lights
fantastic.
up too.
Yeah, it flashes too, but the flashing's a little bit distracting. So I just turned on the lights.
Well,
But
it's like perfect for like walking the dog or something.
yeah, absolutely. Especially where we live.
Oh, yes. For anybody that doesn't know, Bobby and I are both Wisconsin natives. So our sweaters, our jumpers, our fancy jumpers are legitimate because we're cold all the time. And I'm not going to show everybody because I'd have to do a weird kick, but I've got socks over tights and all the rest of it being in the basement. So Bobby, can you give everybody a real quick introduction and then introduce your trend to watch for 2024?
Absolutely. So I'm Bobby Calise. I lead both the insurance team and the growth team at Coterie Insurance. Coterie is a digital MGA that brings speed, simplicity, and service to small commercial lines. So my trend is just the pressure of loss ratios and hard market pressures. And this is a perfect segue from Adrian. Really what we're seeing is carriers having to react to the loss ratios in hard market. So if you think about, Emma, you and I have talked before about, most carriers have been fat and happy. They've been delivering great results, both in growth and on the loss ratio side for awesome combined ratios. There's pressure both on loss ratios and expense ratios for carriers. So I really do believe that you're going to see a lot of change come out of the industry over the next few years because of this.
So let's talk a little bit about like how you think this will turn into a catalyst for change and what we might see moving forward.
Absolutely. So in the past, I think it was more driven change by carriers because of the fear of missing out. It was the FOMO that was driving prioritization, decision-making, and innovation within carriers. Now we have this pressure on expenses and loss ratio, which is going to force folks to think differently about how they do business, about bringing things in like generative AI. You could put $1 in the swear jar. I had to bring it up just because of the previous conversations.
That's right.
But driving efficiency, thinking differently about how they use data. And I know Jeff Shee, if he hasn't been on yet, and talks about just embedded an API. I think thinking through how you distribute in a more efficient and effective way within the market, whether you're direct to consumer or distributing through independent agents, there's a lot of pressure on all sides of the combined ratio for a lot of carriers right now.
Well, and for anybody that didn't catch it, Bobby and I did a whole deep dive interview on this idea. And we also talked about the beer guy. And I'm just going to put that like little, that little piece out there. But we also talked about how this feeds into like data and in specific biases from underwriters and kind of like what that larger idea looks like. So when I am back in LinkedIn and commenting, I'll throw a link in for our whole interview. But we've got like 2 minutes left. Do you want to give people like a little teaser of kind of what that thought process was?
Absolutely. So Emma and I talked about the fact that there's a beer guy that ruined Beer Fridays at one of the organizations that she worked at because he stuck around on a Friday and drank all the beer. And so there's been a lot of underwriting questions or underwriting guidelines that have been put into place by carriers because of the beer guy. It was one bad loss or one or two bad experiences with specific risks within a class of business that have caused, underwriting questions to be put on supplemental applications or underwriting guidelines to be put into place. And one of the things that I think you'll see a trend with is data is going to start eliminating the bias within the underwriting process. And that's something that Coterie's worked really hard to do, both eliminating the bias of the agent, providing bad data, and consistently applying underwriting rules without the bias of an underwriter with experience. So it's been a really fun journey to kind of talk through the underwriting bias and compare it to the Friday beer guy with Emma.
And that was like the perfect way to end our time together. I've also got one last. Steven, Bobby is like in true Badger Nation. She's like up on the side of like full on the way to Lambeau. I'd have to pass Bobby. So I'm down in Madison. So truth be told, I'm a bit harder Badger fan than Packer fan, but I think you get kicked out of the state if you don't cheer for the Packers. So
I'm a Packer supporter, but like an ultimate Badger fan.
Yeah.
So it's just
okay. I'm glad we're on the
it's
same
just
page
a
here.
lot more fun, I think.
I will get the link to Bobby and I's whole conversation on this into the chat later. But Bobby, thank you so much for joining us. And now I'm going to bring up Paul Tyler.
Hey,
welcome to the live stream, Paul.
Emma, how are you? How are
Good.
you?
What is that Santa hat doing behind you?
It is. It's holiday. We're still working hard here, trying to finish off the year strong. So
I do appreciate while we were prepping for this event, Megan said that you were going to kind of be Scroogey about dressing up. So I'm glad that she predicted that appropriately.
She was right. She was right.
Well, you're here. Thank you
Yes.
for joining us. Now, I want you to do a really quick introduction of yourself as well as your trend.
Sure. Paul. My name's Paul Tyler. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer for NASA Financial Group, and this year I think we'll see what the final numbers turn out to be, but I think we will help maybe 10,000 people, Americans, end up with a better retirement plan in place, which, I'd rather talk about the people we helped. I think, we're fortunate enough to work in an industry where the purpose is kind of staring us in the face. And I think a little too often we forget about that. And then also, I launched an incubator about 5 years ago in Hartford, focused on helping drive innovation inside our community, and then broadly drive innovation in our company and for other companies in our retirement and health business.
There we go. I probably have to put some money back into the swear jar. I wasn't muted, but I was too slow with my buttons.
No worries. This is great. You're doing a great
So
job.
let's talk a little bit more about your specific trend to watch for 2020.
Sure. Yeah, and you've had a couple of people talk about AI. How do you not have a trend? Talk about a trend regarding AI, and I'm super bullish on what will happen, how this will impact our market. A lot of hype on the positive side, but we've also got, Emma, a tremendous amount of negativity, fear coming from AI. And I think the biggest trend, I think, will be related to how we address fear. Now, I think if we let things go as is, it will be about what AI could have been in this business. I think what I'd like to do is figure out, as an industry, I'd like to write the trend to be how we took the fear away. It's interesting. Yes, there are, for those of you in IT departments and risk management departments, yes, any new technology has to address controls, privacy, cybersecurity issues, compliance, a whole host of very legitimate issues. I think on the fear side, we're not going to end the world, with the Jupyter notebook. It's not going to happen, but it's there. And it's interesting Emma, to look at the analogies that people use when you talk about, how are we responsible about AI? AI is a drunken thing walking down the street. It's a drunken Santa in New York. We had a few of those. We're going to put guardrails up. Okay, it's a careening car driving side to side. We got to. Or the one I love the most is, we're going to ring fence this thing. It's a kind of bull out there. No, I think when the history gets written, I think it would say, look, yes, AI transformed our industry, but I think when we look back and somebody does a case study, I think, like 2% of this will be about the code that was written. This stuff is not that difficult to write. It's at the end of the day, I think 18% will be, how do we transform our business processes? But 80%, I think, is going to be the chapter that you write in the business you're focused on, which is, how do you help people manage change? Change is wonderful as long as it doesn't happen to me, or I'm the person doing the change.
Paul, are you coming after my heart by talking about
yes,
change management?
you are. Yeah, Emma, you're smack in the middle of this thing. I think we got to think about, like, really, how do you make people feel comfortable in zones they're not in? This is IT departments are now being asked to, like, weigh in on technology they've never seen before. Risk management people are having to, they got scary real risks, and now they've got things that they don't even understand. You've got compliance departments that have to think differently. Every single person has been moved out of their comfort zone.
Mm-hmm.
How do we make it feel okay? Feel okay to feel unsettled.
I'm going to make my plug for my belief on how we fix this, and that's digital literacy. And I don't have time because we're at time already, Paul, but maybe you and I get to team up for another interview to talk all about that idea of digital literacy and dispelling fear, because this is something that I would climb up onto my desk, and that would be my virtual soapbox. And I could tell you guys all about it for the remainder of the time.
Good.
So now I've got 2 more episodes spurred from this that will be coming. But thank you, Paul, for joining us. I appreciate the effort to at least put the Santa hat behind you, even if Megan was right. But thank you for joining us. And now I'm going to bring on our next guest. Hello, Gary. Welcome to the
Hey,
show.
Emma. I'm enjoying this. This is awesome. I like that 2% code we're going to have to hit on that Paul just said. And I did try to be as festive as I can here, because I've also got meetings like Paul, but
I
would not miss
appreciate
this.
it. The rest of my meetings today, they'll have the festive garb along with it, but that's also very fitting for my personality. So can you give an introduction to everybody and then also introduce your trend for us?
Sure. So Gary Huberman, CEO, founder, Uncork. Uncork has pioneered and invented the codeless category. It's the first codeless platform. For those who want to know what that means in the simplest terms, imagine a world you create any software without ever writing a line of code or generating code. And in essence, you're reusing a common code base for the first time in history, in existence, benefiting each other. And so with that said, the trend also is my background, Emma, which is I spent 20 years in capital markets and banking technology and 5 years as MetLife's global CIO. And I could give you the trend from 2 sides as a result of that. The inside outside I saw when I was global CIO, and the outside in as a CEO and founder of a startup. And what I would say is the trends are unique. So first off, on the technology side, I'm going to quote a banking CIO who was in our office this week with his team. I'll give him credit. And he said he's here because Uncork is finally going to end the tech debt treadmill that they've been stuck on for 20 years. And I believe from a back office, from a technology point of view, a digitization point of view, this year is going to be the year to get off the tech debt treadmill and basically address the legacy, address the technical debt that's been an excuse for all this time holding you back. And we're excited to be the answer to that. That's where we play. The other trend, which we've seen play out, look, as a CIO in MetLife, Fortune 50 company, what I saw was the businesses themselves didn't trust each other. Businesses, CEOs didn't understand their competitive advantage. There was no trust in the industry. There was no partnering. There was no working. Even when I created Uncork, I was told if I took investment from any insurance company, they would never use the platform. So we had to be Switzerland from that point of view. And what I'm seeing now is different. What I'm seeing is a trend for the business where it's about ecosystem. It's about embedded insurance. It's about partnerships. It's about understanding what you do well when others don't and complementing them in each place. And I'm excited by that, Emma. That's a trend where we're helping some of our biggest clients do embedded insurance. We're doing underwriter workbenches, and you can see how everything's coming together and being pieced together.
Well, and I love that idea of the ecosystem, because honestly, that was something that I talked about last year after ITC. Coming away from the feel of the event was much more partnership focused than what I had seen ever before. And I think that was kind of like the beginning of the awakening of realizing that, like, no company is going to do this independently. No organization is going to be able to solve everybody's problems alone, and we have to do it together. And like that idea of building that ecosystem, I think, started then and has been slowly building. So where I want to take our conversation in the last couple of minutes that we have is, let's talk a little bit about what does that integration look like? How do we set up that seamless communication across our partnerships and really truly get off of that treadmill, like you said?
Yeah, so what I could tell you is integrations are always hard and difficult. I mean, as a CIO, I would see $5-10 million integrations to build tight integrations between us and our partners or APIs, and those days are done. The reason why is it's too early to pick winners in all of this space. Who's the best document generation company, document AI company? Who's the best LLM? It's going to play out for years. And what you want is you want a strategy of integration where you could snap in and out each of these APIs, each of these partners with ease, where an integration should take no longer than a day instead of taking 6 months to a year. Because by the time you spend that 6 months to a year and all that money, you might find you made the wrong bet. And you want to select, partners that are complementary, that let you embed your insurance, let you serve your insurance, let you serve your clients, let you help your clients. To me, it's about an ecosystem, even internal, made up of APIs. But you need a technology that lets you do that without ever, locking yourself in and creating that flywheel. So that's where we basically see the world of no code and the world of codeless that we've invented are basically converging and coming together. So it's really cool to see. And Emma, I would say for the last second, like I remember coming out of 20 years of capital markets to insurance, and capital markets and banking, it's all about the ecosystem. DTCC was invented by the banks, all the way ACH was done by the banks, the wires. We have none of that in insurance. There's never been a place where you could actually, one place to basically issue a policy or underwrite. So that's what I see coming and excited by.
And I'm excited that these types of events that we get to have with people from all sorts of parts of the insurance ecosystem coming together, talking about this stuff. I hope that these relationships filter out beyond this event and help us make some of this a reality. Thank you so much for joining us, Gary. I'm going to kick you off and bring up our next guest. But again, last plug for everybody. If you're not already, follow everybody on this show and make sure that we actually get those connections moving us in the right direction. Thank you, Gary. And Bobby, welcome to the show.
Hello.
And I love your outfit. It's so fitting for where you are traveling the world. And I'm so excited that you made the time, because it's what time for you right now?
It is 9:30 at night.
So it's 9:30 at night for Bobby, whereas it's 9:30 in the morning for me here in Wisconsin. But we get to come together through this event virtually. And for anybody that's not, I'm going to give you one more plug here too, Bobby. Everybody go follow Bobby and her travel right now, and how the connections she's making and the journey that she's on to kind of find this work-life like integration. But we got to get to your trend. So Bobby, can you give everybody, I clicked you off. Can you give everybody an introduction and then share your trend to watch?
Absolutely. So I'm Bobby Srivastav. I'm one of the founders of Benny Kiva. And I operate as the COO. And what Benny Kiva is really is a powerful low-code, no-code claims and servicing platform. We focus on life, annuity, disability, long-term care, living benefits. And what our goal really is to deliver that complete end-to-end processing and making sure that we don't forget about the end user at mind. So when I think about the trend, we've so much of, Emma, we've talked about this even in your in the last podcast that we talked about, is there so much talked about digitization of FNOL. But the big trend that I'm watching for is that we know for a fact that 50% of our industry is retiring in the next 10 to 12 years. So when we start to think about the customer experience, we cannot forget about the staff experience, because if the industry is retiring, what are we going to do to retain talent? What are we going to do to optimize our processes? And what are we going to do to really elevate the staff experience? Because what we've seen from a claims perspective is that if we don't focus on the staff experience, we talked about this, it's putting a lipstick on a pig. So let's stop focusing so much around the customer experience and that FNOL experience, because the minute it comes to your staff, and if it breaks, if the process breaks, you've got that situation where there's going to be friction. And what we've noticed is that we know that over 80% of the buyers in the market will pay for a better experience. So let's try to figure out, how do we elevate claims, right? Like, let's start with the back office process. So another trend that we're looking at is not only are we figuring out how to optimize the staff experience, but how do we re-envision claims? Can we take an expense on a balance sheet and make claims a revenue driving machine by elevating the customer experience?
So I'm all for making pigs prettier, but I think you've got, like, again, like from our conversation during that last episode, it's so much more. Like, your customer experience isn't limited to that front end interaction. And as a consumer, I can tell you, if I have a really slick digital experience, you better be delivering on my expectation of like operational efficiency, or I'm going to be more mad than I was having to fill out a paper form and at least knowing what to expect moving forward. So Bobby, I want to, one that came on to put this comment up. Can you repeat that retirement statistic that you just mentioned? And then I'm going to ask you my follow-up question.
Yeah, so what we've seen is 50% of our industries retiring in the next 10 to 12 years.
Yep. And it was brought up too at the very beginning with the ways where we were talking about that talent gap a little. So and we're bumping up on time, but I don't care because I want to ask you this question. How do we turn claims into a revenue generator?
Yeah, I think it's a few things. First is, how do we get, I'm going to use a Jerry Maguire quote. How do we get our customers at hello, right? So how do we take that innovation from the point of the customer, become customer obsessed? How do we do more test and learn? And to Lisa's point earlier, let's go beyond the POC. Let's get that test and learn mentality and get into that MVP mindset where we're doing this in production. That's where we're going to truly learn. POCs could be done in test environments. That doesn't really move the needle. You've got to really test and learn in production with the right KPIs and with the right metrics in play. The second piece that I'm going to end with is exactly what Paul alluded to, is how do we lead our innovation efforts and be fearless? Because when we're talking about taking a claims from an expense point of view and turning that into revenue, it's really a concept a lot of folks are now starting to gravitate, but it is going to take a lot of foundation building and some fearlessness. So I'm going to end my segment with a quote from Iron Lady, which says, "Watch your thoughts, for they become words. Watch your words, for they become actions. Watch your actions, for they become habits. Watch your habits, for they become your character. And watch your character, for it becomes your destiny." So if we don't have the right mindset to lead without fear, we're not going to lead that change fruitfully in the industry.
See, Bobby, the fact that you just like dropped the mic on that quote is why there were so many people the second you came on the screen being like, I love Bobby. Thank you so much for joining us. I am over my official time with you, Bobby, but I'm going to give everybody, again, a reminder of the assignment. Come into the chat. Let us know if you'd like a ticket for ITI and which region of the world, and keep questions and comments going through. Bobby sparked a lot with that idea, so keep the discussion going in the comments. Thank you, Bobby. Go to sleep now. We'll talk to you soon. And now I've got Sabine in the house. Look at this cute little reindeer. Or wait, are those horns or are they? Yeah.
Okay. Yes, I tried to bring you a little bit of Christmas fun here.
I love it. Thank you for joining us. I'm good. This is just like my favorite day of the year. It's so fun to get to bring all of my friends on and also see all these comments that are coming through. So I think there's not many that don't know who you are, Sabine, but can you give an introduction and then share a little bit about your trend to watch for 2024?
So sure, I'm Sabine van der Linden, or VDL. I run Alchemy Crew, Ventures and Media. Ventures, I work with amazing insurance companies to help them through the R&D and commercialization challenges. We have fun to really look at the Horizon 2 and 3 trends and see how new technology is disrupting us. So, for example, generative AI has been part of my world for the past year, actually, and testing a lot. And so people always comment when I do something weird, but actually it's about testing generative AI. And I actually got to know a lot. But also do media. And you saw I'm number 0.5% lead from a podcast point of view, in the UK, I talked to my manager yesterday, and actually 0.5% top podcast around the world. So I don't know how I manage that, but I'm very proud. Media meaning that I work with amazing brands and help them communicate better through social media. So my top trend. So I love hearing what I heard from Paul, from Gary, and from Lisa. You've talked about. I'm going to combine everything into one statement: the future of work. My trend is the work is changing. We are working remotely, we are working hybrid, whether we talk about generative AI or all these amazing trends I've heard so far, it means we are learning to work differently. It also means that people will need to be upskilled, will need to actually learn new skills, and we know we have a massive talent gap. So talent gap means we have a talent war. It's really costly to find people right now. And so what do we do around that topic? Technology will be an enabler. Technology will be an enabler because we do not have a choice. We just need to try and play with the new things which are out there. It's what Paul just said, right, a few moments ago. Let's not be scared. You know, the industry is fearful of what generative AI is going to bring to us, but I call it my virtual executive assistant. And so therefore you always need a human in the loop in anything you do with a generative AI prompt. When I talk about skills, we need to learn to do things differently. Prompt engineering, I'm coaching myself, right? We all have to learn to do things differently. My team doesn't have a choice to learn how to ask the right questions either. But what does that mean at the end? In the end, for insurance, that means that we are moving to a much more dynamic world, which is Lisa applied AI or applied dynamic, or what I call embedded technology, embedded AI. We are going to have to know that we are moving from static to dynamic. Do you enjoy a picture? Or do you enjoy a video? These are the type of world we are moving into. We want real-time response. We want personalization. I talk often with the insurers I interact with about the customer segment of one, which it doesn't really work in insurance because it's about mutuality. But how do we find a way to answer the customer experience need and at the same time allow for mitigating risk? We are moving in a world where new risks are going to emerge every single day. And so we just need to be wary of them. Ema.
Thank you so much for joining us. I have more questions and probably like 15 other follow-ups, and I see other people coming into the comments, but these damn 5 minutes go so fast. So thank you so much for joining us, Sabine. And I saw a couple of votes for your outfit being number one on the festivity side. So A+ on that side as well. But thank you for joining us. And next is Nigel. Hello, hello. So how does your swear jar feel after? Ooh, I was going to say.
Oh dear. That's the comment for the swear jar.
How many dollars do I need to put in?
I think someone owes us like a 50 gazillion trillion million zillion dollars right now.
Uh-oh. I don't know if I'm not sure I make enough to be able to donate that much to charity here, but we talked about this. Here, I'm going to do the grand reveal of where the cookie was. I made a post earlier this week of Margot, who will be up as our next guest, Nigel and I in New York at Nigel's office. And the cookie was our covert way of telling people that we were visiting Nigel and his team. But while we were there, he told me that I needed to donate the swear jar money to a charity. So I will be on the tail end of this. I've been keeping track of how many times I've been muted and how many times generative AI has been mentioned, and I will be donating to a food bank in honor of that swear jar. But before I keep going and waste all of our time talking, Nigel, can you give everybody an introduction and then introduce your trend?
I'd love to. So I'm going to add to your swear jar on purpose shortly. On purpose. I'm Nigel. I lead insurance for Google Cloud based out in New York. I will say to you, I am traditionally a Virgo, but this week I'm a Gemini. See what I did there?
Ooh.
See what I did there? My trend is simplification. So I think 2022 insurers, insurtechs all focused on growth. I think this year we've all been leaning in heavily into cost optimization. And there's been a few comments about layoffs in the industry and many more. I think next year we're going to see a world of simplification. And simplification will be driven by a pausing and reflecting with what's been released over the last 6 months by technology companies, whether it's the Uncorks of the world with no code, whether it's what we're up to, or other players in the market that are bringing out capabilities that allow us to just pause, reflect, stop what we've done previously, and actually go further, faster in net new ways. And I break that into two comments. One is where we play, and two is how we win. And I think in the back half of this year, we've seen many folks look at where they play. And what I mean by that is they will divest countries that they're no longer focused on, and they'll divest lines of business that are no longer core focus for them. So we'll see folks get narrower and drive into things that will drive profitability for those organizations. And then how we win will be working out which capabilities they lean in on to go drive that change going forward.
So how are we going to accomplish this? Like, what are we going to do to get there?
Well, so and I love all the trends before. There was a really good comment a minute ago. I think it was Bobby that talked about mindset. She absolutely nailed it. For me, it's about 10x, not 10%. And everything that we do, you go to any of the folks here that work within the technology organizations and insurers, everyone is busy. Everyone's got a backlog. Everyone's got 6, 12, 9. Gary talked about the technical debt treadmill. We're forever trying to run through that thing and get off of it. And I think we have to pause and go, what do we do to get 10x, not 10%? So maybe it's a think big, start small, act quickly. Maybe it's a move from evolution to revolution. So stop doing it bit by bit and accepting 1% or 2% or 3%. What have we got to do to break free from all of those things? So there's a whole load of things. Paul talked about education. How do we give people the capabilities and tools to go learn these things and remove those fears that Paul talked about? And that for me will be a huge shift that will allow people to break free from that technical debt that Gary talked about.
Thank you so much for joining us. As I said, I will continue to keep track of my swear jar. I understand that assignment. And thank you for dressing festively in your oh dear sweater. I'm going to leave you and bring Margot on next. But thank you, Nigel. And keep the conversation going in the comments, everybody. And I wouldn't have expected anything less than a sparkly hat from Margot.
Wait, it's the other side. Thank you. Thank you.
And just because I can and it's my show, I want to give you like a little virtual round of applause for the fact that we were in New York visiting Nigel, and there this week was Margot is accepting a FinTech Founder of the Year award.
Yes.
And we got to go to the New York Stock Exchange floor. So more content and fun coming from Margot.
A lot of content. There was so much content.
So I had to say that. And everybody in the comments, give her like little clapping emojis.
Oh, thank you.
Say congratulations. So Margot, can you do an introduction for anybody that doesn't know you and share a little bit about your trend?
Yes. My name is Margot Giles. I'm the CEO of Iris Insurtech, and we are an insurance management platform that really hones in and focuses on the customer experience through the eyes of the human, which is really at the basis of everything we do in insurance, are those human connections. So I have a trend, and I'm wearing red because it's a hot take, and you know how I love to do hot takes. And I'm going to spill a little tea, but I'm going to piggyback off of, I think, Gary and Nigel. Clearly, we're all discussing this the other day. My trend in 24 is I think we're going to see the death of this monolithic digital transformation machine that a lot of large companies, both on the distribution side and the carrier side, and even some of the reinsurance, have been going through. So, Emma, you lead digital change all the time. And, the underground rumbling, spilling the tea or the juice in my case, because I'm home today with my kids. But these companies are fed up with 5-year digital transformations running in the hundreds of millions of dollars that end up not going anywhere or serving anyone. And I think it feeds into Bobby's point as well, which is the employees of these companies in turn are tired of the 5-year digital transformation that no one asked for, that doesn't serve them. And the customer is tired of the 5-year digital transformation that doesn't serve them either. So my prediction moving forward in 24 is we're going to see a more move towards agile technology adoption, especially in larger corporations. I think we're going to see those POCs move to production. And I think we're going to see an interesting trend in that these companies, even maybe middle-sized regional carriers, mid-market distribution centers, that are going to be able to adopt that agile sort of way of thinking of taking tech and then implementing it into their companies. They're going to be able to point that Death Star at these big, slow-moving behemoths, and they're going to take serious market share because they're not in the middle of a digital transformation, which seems like all of them are. And so that is my prediction. And then by saying that is, I like to leave it with, it's similar in the healthcare. We talk about how there's no money in the cure, right? And so think about that concept as you go forth in your digital transformations and say, like, who are we surrounding ourselves with? What is the ultimate goal here? Is the goal to have $100 million or $500 million digital transformation? Or is the goal the end result of agile software?
The point that you just brought up of the fact that when we look at this like equation of transformation, who's winning? It's literally been a lose, lose, lose.
Everyone's losing.
And
why?
Something's got to give. And I actually unintentionally, you guys are all doing my job for me. You're going to loop perfectly into Denise when I bring her on here in a minute. And we're going to talk a little bit more about this idea as well. But you're right. It's time to change. And going back to what Paul said, a lot of that comes from education. A lot of that comes from companies that are brave enough, from what Bobby was saying, to actually move forward and start changing this paradigm.
Yeah.
And I love that you not only delivered with the sparkles, but the hot take.
Always with the sparkles. Always.
Thank you for joining us, Margot. I'm going to bring Denise on and continue this little loop of a conversation. Hello and welcome.
Hey, Emma.
So Margot just set us up so perfectly for a little bit of your trend here as well. But before we get to that, can you give everybody an introduction and then introduce your trend?
Yeah, so Denise Garth, I'm the Chief Strategy Officer at Majesco, also responsible for our marketing globally. And Majesco, you're gonna have to put in another dollar there, Emma. Majesco provides intelligent core for both property and casualty and life, annuity, and health. And what we mean by intelligent core is embedded analytics, including now Gen AI and other types of capabilities, as well as digital distribution and loss control, one of the topics previously. So looking forward to the conversation.
And now I have to put some money in that swear jar for the mute button again. So Denise, can you introduce your trend for 2024 to watch?
Yeah, so what I want to talk about, and we've been kind of talking about it throughout, is it's really around product innovation, but it's really focused on trying to close two gaps. We've got a protection gap and an expectation gap for customers out in the marketplace. And that protection gap is with regard to needing different products that meet different kinds of risk needs, and being able to align that in a way that it really is humanizing to the individual and it's personalized. So think about it in terms of products that you can use the customer's personal data, whether it's telematic insurance for auto so that they can actually maybe be able to afford it and it's priced differently, or maybe it's benefits type of insurance for a gig worker that it's on and it's off depending on when they are. We've got so many different types of gaps from a protection standpoint that our traditional products, while still needed, we need other products that can meet the gaps, whether it's because of cost or whether it's because of risk. We really need that within this marketplace. The other one is the customer expectation gap. And that's really around the difference between what customers expect and want and what we're delivering as an industry. And that's a huge gap that we've been tracking in some of our research over the last number of years. And it's really tied to different demographics, differences between the different generational groups. It's around lifestyles. It's around the experience that you want. And the really interesting thing here, Emma, is that there's limitless potential to deliver really personal data-driven products and value-added services that creates value and can reverse that protection gap and can really kind of delight people in a way that it's relevant, it's affordable, and it's accessible. That's really where I see that we have an opportunity.
And Denise and I teamed up for a weekly interview for Leading Change that I'm going to tease to everybody now because it has not been released. So I can't put a link in the comment like I will with some of the other ones that were mentioned today. But keep an eye out for that because we're talking through this idea. And I see we've got like 30 seconds left on our piece. So we're probably not going to get into all the details that we got into in our interview. But we talked through like what's needed from a technology perspective to be able to help close that protection gap. And the things that we should have learned from what Margot and I were just talking about with like digital transformation 1.0 and how that plays into what the future looks like for us. So that's my plug for everybody to stay tuned to future episodes of Leading Change as well, and see all of the great conversation that we were able to have. Denise, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks,
before I pull Carrie on here in a second, I'm going to tell everybody this is like one of your last warnings, guys. We're coming to the end. If you want to be entered into the ITI giveaway, get those little fingers tap in and put your desired location and some festive emojis in there. And also keep questions and comments going. If you've got a trend that hasn't been mentioned that you think should be a part of the conversation, put that into the chat as well, and let's keep it all going. But thank you, Denise, so much. And now we're going to bring up Carrie, who's a little present today. Welcome to the live stream.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
All right, so I'm going to have you do the same thing that everyone else has done. Can you please give everybody a little bit of an introduction, and then we'll segue into introducing your trend.
Yeah, absolutely. Hello, everybody. My name is Carrie Nadeau. I'm the co-founder and co-CEO of a company called Loop. We are building the most inclusive car insurance company. I'm so excited to tell you about a trend I'm seeing as it relates to Insurtechs, which we've talked a little bit about today, but I thought I could give you a little forecast and a little visibility into what I see as the real opportunities that continue to emerge out of Insurtechs and maybe some of the challenges as well.
And there I go with more money into the jar. All right. So let's talk about that forecast. What are you seeing and what can you share with us about like the next evolution of the Insurtech market?
Yeah, I'll be blunt. 2023 was a tough year for all startup companies, but Insurtechs in particular, due to the performance of those companies that came before us that IPO'd. And when you're held in public markets accountable for performance, started to demonstrate that, their strategies were not long-term viable, that growing at all costs through venture dollar investments wasn't going to be a way to create a sustainable business or a profitable business or one with a loss ratio that could be controlled. And so I think I'm looking forward to what I'm calling Insurtech 3.0, the next wave of insurance companies that are coming out or through a very hard market. And with that pressure makes diamonds, right? We actually have to focus on profitability. We have to focus on performance in order to operate a business in a very different context of a macroeconomic environment that doesn't have a lot of capital resources available for companies to fuel growth through just digital ad spend or on the backs of VC dollars. But I think that's a tremendous opportunity. You're going to see the strong emerge from this period with really profitable, potentially businesses in the Insurtech segment. So what I'd like to forecast and I hope we see is the delivery on some of the promises that Insurtechs have always held. And I see that across threefold in insurance specifically. First is service to the customer, putting the customer first. And I think a few of the previous speakers spoke on being customer-centric, really creating a product that works backwards from the customer's experience. And at Loop, we serve a customer, a lower credit customer who maybe only has a car to insure, who rents their home, who pretty much every other car insurance company considers not preferred, right? They're not fighting for that customer. And that means that the quality of the service for that customer is really low. They're being overcharged, even though they don't present as high of a risk. They're not likely to be involved in car crashes. They may have completely clean driving records. But it allows us to create in a pocket where no one's really looking and provide a really high quality experience for people that haven't had that experience of service. I think that's one pillar that Insurtechs are going to make a lot of progress on in the coming year. The second is around innovation, right? Digital innovation in particular. I think this year, Ajit Jain at Berkshire Hathaway mentioned in their annual press conference for their performance that they had about 600 or 700 different systems that did not speak to each other at Geico. And before they could, really innovate in telematics or really consider AI, ML, the first thing they needed to do was this technical overhaul of their data infrastructure and all of the technical debt that had been built up over hundreds of years of processing insurance policies, sometimes on paper. So what I see as well in the Insurtech scene, this delivery on the value proposition that through technology, can not only operate efficiently, but we can also innovate. And we do that with pricing, right? We structurally removed credit scores from the way that auto insurance is priced. And we're able to acquire customers with a very reasonable loss ratio performance over the last 2 years because we have the data infrastructure that gives us different insights with different data to qualify those folks for really affordable insurance. And that's going to keep happening in Insurtech because of the technical sort of overwhelming debt that the institutions have that they're still working through with these 10-year, 20-year plans and hundreds of millions of dollars in investment. And I think the last bit I want to touch on is talent. Bobby mentioned, a lot of the insurance industry is looking to retire in the next few years. But what that means is it opens up a channel for those insurtechs that are paying attention to really high quality talent that hasn't been promoted from within the organizations that they're working for. Similar to our customers, they've been overlooked, they've been under promoted, they've been underpaid. And I guess one thing I want to touch on is while it may be scary still to work for insurtechs that have had cuts in their staffing for the last year or so, it does still present an opportunity for those who are ambitious and who are willing to take that risk of working for an early stage company to realize that diversity and inclusion in this industry is still possible, that there are companies that are making an effort to find a place where Black women, where Hispanic people feel welcome, feel celebrated and appreciated, and are making contributions to the evolution of what insurance looks like and who we serve and how we serve those communities specifically. So I'm optimistic about Insurtech 3.0 into 2023. And I think we still have the potential to achieve many of the fundamental benefits that Insurtechs were originally sort of created the inspiration for transformation in this industry. And I'm happy to lead that as one of those leaders. This is the CEO of Loop.
I love it. And I love, you mentioned earlier in the clip that you were talking about, like the diamonds are going to start to come out. Now that we've seen the pressure, now we get to look forward to seeing the true potential that we've all been talking about for so long. So I'm excited to get to watch you guys and the other folks that are truly making mountains move over the next year. But thank you so much for joining me, Carrie. And everybody in the comments, there was a lot of feedback about liking what you're saying. So certainly check those out once we get off the live stream. My last guest is sprinkling a little Christmas magic on to make sure that he was able to join us. So up next, I'm going to bring on Brian Falchuk. And welcome to our Trends event. Thank you for taking the time to join us.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. And it's weird because I'm on a plane right now, yet somehow I'm still able to do this. I don't know how.
Maybe it's like Christmas magic, giving you the ability to be in two places at once or something like that.
I can hit all those homes in just a few hours. Like, how can I not do this? And so, yeah.
You're basically Santa is what you're telling us.
Yeah, he's helping me out. That's why he's here with me.
Okay, so can you give everybody a real quick introduction before we dive into your trend?
Sure. So I'm Brian Falchuk. I run an organization called PLRB that helps US-based carriers with delivering coverage. We do a bunch of stuff around that. And I also wrote a book series called The Future of Insurance that tries to help everyone in this industry think about how to move forward and overcome all the things that hold us back to innovate, evolve, and hopefully support people better.
Great. So the question of the day, what is your trend for 2024?
So I think 2023 was this really challenging year from a coverage standpoint. And I think the plus side of that is it put front and center the need for rethinking what coverage or insurance products mean for so many people. So you had all these carriers who were like, you know what, we're not writing this line in this state anymore. We're pulling out of this market segment, or we're going to not do new business in it. And that's a fine reaction when you're not able to charge a viable rate for a given line. And viable means economically viable for you to offer it and economically viable for an insurance shopper to buy it, because you can charge more, but they may not buy it. And so then you're stuck either way. But that's a short-term thing, because you can't just pull out of markets and think that, you're not painting yourself into a corner. What I hope happens in 2024, and I've seen some early discussions and some early moves around this, is the recognition that, our existing suite of indemnity products may not be fit for purpose in all cases anymore. There's so much change, like climate change, pricing changes from the supply chain, from the vendors that we work with to do the repairs, to step in and represent our insureds in court, whatever it might be, that are driving up the sort of like core economics of offering insurance coverage. And so I'm seeing discussions around, for example, parametrics is, what if you carve out this component of the homeowner's policy or commercial property or whatever that's not viable anymore economically, and find a different way to cover it. It may not be complete coverage like an indemnity policy was, but it may be economically viable coverage that, doesn't get someone 100% back to their pre-loss state, but also doesn't allow them to go through financial ruin if they do face a loss. So, you're not getting 500,000 for your home, but you're getting 150 to make sure you're not ruined for the rest of your life. It's a cheaper product then. So it's this balance. I don't think we were up for that conversation before, and I'm starting to see a willingness to have that. And it's personal lines in different niches. I just had someone on my podcast that was working on IoT for earthquakes to carve out that quake coverage in a really interesting way in commercial lines. Like, there's some really cool things that are starting to hit in the market. Tornado cover, hail. Like, hail is the big problem for homeowners right now in so many states. We're going to need to figure out how to make insurance viable for both sides of the buying equation. And I think things like using parametrics to rethink what it is we offer buyers is a really interesting way to do that. So that's my hope for 2024. I could be totally wrong. It may take a couple more years, but I'm at least seeing like that initial snowball starting to roll a bit.
Great. Thank you so much, Brian, for sharing that and for being in two places at once.
Yes.
And hopefully Santa's magic continues into a wonderful 2024 for you. All right, everybody. I had the opportunity during that last clip to take a look at the comments a little bit more, and I heard that there's been some people that have been freezing. I think all of our greatness within this LinkedIn Live may have frozen the chat for some people. So I apologize for any technical difficulties on the LinkedIn Live side, but the whole recording will be available. I'll also be updating the YouTube recording with timestamps for everybody's trends over the next couple of days. So if you come and visit back next week, you'll be able to pop around the live and see all of the goodness that came from this conversation again. And as I always do, I think I will get my little editing hands ready and condense it down to like a 10-minute version so that we can just get the trends listed out for everybody to consume a little bit easier as well. I cannot thank everybody enough. I just looked. We had 1,685 people registered for this event, which is just mind-blowing to me. Again, it's so exciting to know that our industry is focused on partnerships, looking to the future, and what we can do together to really change the way that insurance works. I have said it a couple of times now. You still have the opportunity to put some festive emojis along with your desired ITI ticket location into the chat. And I would love for every single person that joined us to follow everybody that was a part of the live stream today so that you can stay up to date with their content and their trends. And I would be remiss if I didn't also say, please make sure that you're following Insurtech Insights and all of the wonderful content that they're creating, as well as the Leading Change LinkedIn page, so that you can stay up to date with all of my weekly interviews and these conversations that we've been talking about throughout the entire live stream. I have a day ahead of me trying to make my way through all of these comments, start looking at who we get to give some tickets away to, interacting with all of you in much more of a live interaction. But sincerely, from my heart, thank you so much for everybody who joined me for the conversation and shared their insights and took their time to do this. And for every single person that hung on for an hour and a half with us in this rapid fire format. Keep an eye out for more content to come later this year and live shows like this on a monthly basis. But happy holidays to everybody. Happy New Year. And thank you so much for joining me.